Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome back to my channel Think Big Learn Smart. Today the topic of our discussion is theories of imperialism, and in that theories of imperialism we are going to talk about dependency theory in particular. So what we will discuss about the dependency theory, we will discuss its concept, history, advantages as well as its disadvantages in the international relations. So let's move on. First of all, we are going to start with the history of dependency theory. So it started around in 1950s, and it was developed by the UN director at that time, Raul Prebisk, which saw the disparity in the international arena, that dominant nations were exploiting the weaker nations for their own benefit. So he criticized the outdated schema of international division of labor in response to concern over disparities in development worldwide. So it was also an answer to the modernization school. As we know that in the 1950s, 60s and 70s there was a lot of technological advancement going on. As we know, there was a cold war going on between USSR and the US, which basically drive the technological advancement in this rivalry environment. And this last point is also talking about that because of the revolutionary atmosphere of the period, it got hold in the society. So before moving on and understanding the dependency theory, we have to understand the basic concept of imperialism. What really is imperialism? And I have listed down two definitions of imperialism. So these definitions differ, and the concept of imperialism also differs according to various higher thinkers. Well, these two definitions of imperialism are that refers to the formation of an empire and has been aspect of all periods of the history. It has been part of the history from a very long time, in which one nation has extended its domination over its neighboring nations. That's what the first definition of imperialism is. So the second definition is, it's a process whereby the dominant politico-economic interests of one nation expropriate from their own enrichment for the land, labor, raw materials and markets of another people. So this second definition is basically talking about that imperialism is domination of one dominant nations on the weaker nations and using them as for their own benefit. So what is dependence? What is the concept of dependence? Dependence is a situation in which the economy of certain countries is conditioned by the development and expansion of another country to which the former is subjected. So this dependence basically means that the countries are interrelated in its relations. Countries are dependent on each other for their development. And for understanding this dependency concept, I have attached this picture, and this picture basically gives the whole idea of dependency. So let's understand this picture. There are three circles in that picture, and the outermost circle is of periphery, the inner is semi-periphery, and the innermost is core. So these things are talking about that there are some countries that lie in the periphery circle, some are in the semi-periphery circle, and the core countries. So the core countries are the most developed countries, they are the dominant ones. So, and the periphery countries are the most underdeveloped countries that are basically exploited by the core countries. And this shows that the resources comes from all the periphery countries to the core countries, and the final goods and the final products are made in the core countries and are gone towards the periphery countries back. So it says that the periphery countries are serving the core countries and they are serving their benefits. In other terms, the relation of interdependence between two or more economies between these and world trade assumes the form of dependence when some countries, the dominant ones, can expand and can be self-sustaining, while other countries, dependent ones, can do this only as a reflection of that expansion, which can have either positive or negative effect on their immediate development. So this whole definition is also talking about this picture So I have listed few advantages of dependency as well. They are its own advantages as well. So the first advantage of dependency is it gives a political unity. When the interests of nations are aligned in a particular manner, they become friends, and they have their aligned interests, so they cannot fight with each other. So it promotes political unity. And economic development also boosts with dependency. When countries are dependent on each other, they are sharing their own knowledge, and it drives the new form of development. Training for self government, it helps underdeveloped nations to develop, and it's basically letting them know how to deal with the internal problems, and grow in the competitive environment. It promotes internationalism. Internationalism means universal nationhood or brotherhood, and it's a natural phenomena in Aya. Whenever the interests of nations align, they become a unified thing. So what are the disadvantages of dependency? I have listed the disadvantages of dependency as well. It promotes political domination. Like, as we know that not all the nations are in the dependency good for the underdeveloped countries. They dominate and fulfill their own needs through the weaker nations. So they exploit economically and as well as politically. They destroys natural culture and morality, and this happens this happens quite often in the international arena. We have seen the core countries exploiting weaker countries for their own benefit. It promotes racial discrimination, and it introduces international war and rivalry. So it is a common thing when the weaker nations don't get their proper share, they will fight for that. And its great example is of the World War II, when the Germany felt that it is being used and exploited. It went for the war, and there was the huge catastrophic consequences for all that. It is inhumane for the weaker or underdeveloped country, because it is being exploited by all the countries above it. It's anti-democratic and anti-liberal, because the decisions of the country itself are not implemented directly. It is controlled by the countries above itself. So these were the few disadvantages of the dependency theory. So that was all about dependency theory. Thank you very much. Please like, comment, share and subscribe. Allah Hafiz.